Commander Sam Johnson stared at the alien fleet surrounding Earth's last defensive outpost. 300 warships against his lone damaged cruiser. The alien admiral's face filled the view screen, mandibles clicking with anticipation. "Surrender, human. Your species has lost." Sam laughed. Actually laughed. The Vex admiral's compound eyes blinked in confusion. "You find your extinction amusing." "No," Sam said, pressing a seemingly insignificant button on his console. "I find your assumption that we could lose amusing." Across the galaxy, every piece of Vex technology simultaneously deactivated. Their ships drifted lifelessly in space. Their weapons fell silent. Their advanced AI systems crashed. Their homeworld plunged into darkness, all because one human pressed one button. On a distant planet, two Vex historians discussed this impossible event. "How?" asked the younger historian. "How could one human defeat our entire civilization?" The elder Vex sighed. "Because writers of human fiction seem to believe their species possesses abilities beyond comprehension. In reality, humans are moderately intelligent primates with impressive endurance. In fiction, they are inexplicable gods." The scene shifted to another galaxy, where human explorer Dave Miller faced off against the crystalline entity known as the Thought Collective, beings of pure energy who had evolved beyond physical form over millions of years. "Your primitive brain cannot comprehend our existence," the entity informed him. Dave shrugged, pulled out a standard-issue wrench, and swung it at the nearest crystal. The entire collective shattered instantly. "Humans," Dave muttered, stowing the wrench. "We're just built different." In yet another fictional universe, human diplomat Mary Wilson single-handedly negotiated peace between two species who had been at war for 50,000 years, despite having met them both just yesterday and knowing nothing about their cultures. The solution was obvious. She later explained to her captain, "I simply pointed out that fighting is bad, and cooperation is good." The captain nodded sagely. Classic human insight. Across countless sci-fi universes, humans displayed impossible abilities, breathing in toxic atmospheres because they built up an immunity, defeating supercomputers by thinking outside the box, surviving in space without protection because they held their breath really well. These absurd portrayals reflected something deeper, the human desire to see themselves as exceptional in a vast, uncaring cosmos. But the most ridiculous aspect wasn't the superhuman abilities, it was the complete lack of explanation for them. In one notorious example, human miner Bob Taylor defeated an ancient alien god by remembering his humanity, whatever that meant. No further explanation was provided. The elder Vex historian closed the book of human fiction with a dejected sigh. "And that," he told his student, "is why we must never underestimate human writers' capacity to make their species inexplicably superior to all others, even when it contradicts basic logic, physics, and narrative coherence." The student nodded, before asking the question that haunted all who studied human fiction. But why do they need these fantasies of superiority? What are they compensating for? The elder had no answer. Some mysteries of human psychology were too profound even for fiction to explain. Dr. Jack Thompson was, by all official accounts, an average human physicist. His credentials were respectable, but not extraordinary. His previous publications were solid contributions to the field, not revolutionary breakthroughs. By any reasonable measure, he was simply a competent scientist doing his job, which made it all the more baffling when he solved the unified field theory over lunch. "I was eating a sandwich," he explained to the stunned gathering of the Galactic Science Academy, "and it just sort of came to me." The audience of 17 alien species, many with brains 3 times the size of a human's and centuries more advanced in their understanding of quantum mechanics, stared in disbelief. "You solved the fundamental question of physics while eating a sandwich?" asked Exor 12, the Academy's most distinguished theoretician who had devoted 143 years to this very problem. "Yeah," Jack shrugged. It was a good sandwich. This scene played out with variations across countless science fiction narratives. Humans, despite having existed as a spacefaring civilization for mere decades, compared to the millennia of experience possessed by other species, somehow managed to intuitively understand concepts that had eluded the greatest alien minds. On the bridge of the starship Improbable, Lieutenant Emma Brown glanced at the alien device for approximately 3 seconds. "It's a quantum phase inverter with a modified harmonic resonance chamber," she declared confidently. The ship's alien science officer, who possessed an eidetic memory and 17 advanced degrees, looked confused. "How could you possibly know that?" Emma shrugged. "Just seems obvious." In the conference room of the Pan-Galactic Council, Human Representative Tom Wilson was presented with a mathematical proof that had confounded the Council's best minds for generations. He solved it in minutes by doodling on a napkin. "You humans," marveled the ancient Synphilect ambassador, "a being composed of pure thought. Your brains are so inefficient, so limited. And yet, we're just creative," Tom replied modestly, before casually resolving 3 more unsolvable equations while finishing his coffee. The most egregious example came from the best-selling novel Humanity's Edge, where mechanic Mike Davis, with no formal education beyond high school, reprogrammed an alien supercomputer by thinking about it real hard. When asked how he accomplished this feat, the character explained, "I'm human. We think differently than machines. More humanly." The explanation satisfied no one with even a passing understanding of computer science, yet the book sold 50 million copies. What made these portrayals particularly absurd wasn't just the intellectual feats themselves, but the complete lack of effort they required. Humans in these stories didn't spend years studying alien technology or mathematics. They simply glanced at complex problems and intuited solutions, as if intelligence was a magical human superpower rather than the result of learning, experience, and hard work. The Galactic Library's wing devoted to human cognitive exceptionalism in fiction grew each year, filled with stories of humans outsmarting ancient artificial intelligences, solving philosophical quandaries that had stumped alien civilizations for millennia, and generally being inexplicably brilliant despite their objectively limited neural architecture. "Perhaps," suggested one alien literary critic, "these stories reveal more about human insecurity than human potential." The critique was largely ignored, particularly by human readers who found these portrayals totally plausible. Captain Bill Smith was, by every objective measure, the least qualified person to save the galaxy. His academic records were mediocre. His military service was unremarkable. His leadership skills were questionable at best. He had failed the standard fitness assessment 3 times. His psychological profile indicated a concerning lack of impulse control. He had been passed over for promotion 7 times. These were, of course, precisely the qualifications needed to defeat the greatest threat the universe had ever known. "I don't understand," said the proconsul of the 7 systems, her luminescent tentacles pulsing with confusion. "Why would we entrust our survival to this?" "This human," supplied her aide. "Yes, this human who appears to be thoroughly average, or perhaps slightly below average, by his own species standards." The explanation was always the same across 1,000 different sci-fi narratives, because only an unpredictable, untrained, somewhat incompetent human could possibly save the day. In the battle against the hive mind, all the carefully trained special forces failed. The elite warriors with centuries of combat experience were defeated. The tactical geniuses whose strategies had won 100 prior wars were outmaneuvered. But Bill Smith, who had once gotten lost in his own spaceship and accidentally fired a missile while trying to operate the coffee machine, somehow stumbled upon the perfect solution. "I figured," he explained afterward to the astonished Galactic Council, "that I'd just try random stuff until something worked." The council members exchanged glances. "And that is a strategy?" asked the Supreme Commander, whose military academy training had spanned 4 decades. "Nah," Bill grinned. just winging it. This phenomenon wasn't limited to military scenarios. Across all genres of science fiction, the pattern repeated. Competent, experienced professionals would fail, setting the stage for the most unlikely human to succeed through a combination of luck, hunches, and what many authors termed human intuition. When the great machine threatened to consume all organic life, it wasn't Dr. Eliza Gray, the brilliant xenobiologist with 3 doctorates, who found the solution. It was her assistant Tom, whose primary qualification was having watched a lot of old movies. Sometimes, Tom explained, while somehow diffusing an alien doomsday device with a paperclip, you just need a fresh perspective. The most puzzling aspect of this trope was how frequently alien species, despite their superior technology, longer lifespans, and greater accumulated knowledge, would stand aside and watch in admiration as a thoroughly unremarkable human save the day through methods that could generously be described as winging it. They're so unpredictable, the aliens would marvel. So chaotic. So human. What none of these stories acknowledged was the statistical improbability of such scenarios. For every unlikely hero who succeeded through random chance, countless others would fail catastrophically. Yet in fiction, the success rate approached 100%. Perhaps most telling was the universal reaction of these accidental heroes. When asked how they accomplished the impossible, they would invariably shrug and say something like, "Just doing my job," or "anyone would have done the same." Which was, of course, patently untrue. No one else had done the same. The trained professionals had all failed spectacularly, creating the need for an unlikely hero in the first place. And yet, across the multiverse of science fiction, the pattern held. When all reasonable options failed, send in the most unreasonable human available. Somehow, they'd stumble their way to victory. The greatest mystery wasn't how they succeeded, but why readers found this trope so endlessly appealing. The Galactic Federation's annual Literary Analysis Conference had reached its most controversial panel: humor as a uniquely human weapon in science fiction. Dr. Mork, not his real name, but the only one humans could pronounce, adjusted his translation device and addressed the packed auditorium. In 78.3% of human science fiction, narratives involving multiple species, humor is portrayed as a uniquely human trait that confounds, disarms, or utterly bewilders non-human entities. He displayed a holographic chart showing hundreds of fictional scenarios where humans had defeated technologically superior aliens through the strategic deployment of jokes, puns, or sarcasm. Consider the classic example from Galaxy's Edge, he continued. When surrounded by the draconian death squad, Commander Andy Parker responds to their ultimatum with, and I quote, "Well, that's just rude." The audience murmured. Some checked their translation devices. This statement, Dr. Mork explained, contains no tactical information, provides no survival advantage, and serves no discernible purpose. Yet in the narrative, it so confuses the Draconians that Parker's crew gains a critical 3-second advantage. The pattern appeared across countless stories. Humans using humor in life or death situations, often saving the day by making a quip that inexplicably paralyzed their opponents with confusion. In Stellar Odyssey, diplomat Jane Cooper prevented interstellar war by telling a joke so conceptually human that the alien aggressors spent 3 days trying to understand it, by which time the peace treaty had been ratified. In Quantum Collapse, engineer Tim Rogers defeated an artificial superintelligence by creating a logical paradox disguised as a knock-knock joke. What these narratives never address, Dr. Mork noted, is why advanced species capable of faster-than-light travel, dimensional manipulation, or hive-mind consciousness would be incapacitated by wordplay. The most extreme example came from The Last Laugh, where humanity's last defense against extinction was literally a comedian whose stand-up routine so baffled the invading force that they retreated from Earth entirely. It makes no sense, the alien commander had declared. If their response to extinction is to make observations about airline food. We cannot predict their battle strategies. Beyond the tactical applications of humor, these stories shared another common element: the portrayal of alien species as humorless, literal-minded entities incapable of understanding even the concept of jokes. "We find this particularly puzzling," Dr. Mork admitted. "The evolutionary advantages of humor, stress relief, social bonding, creative problem-solving, would likely develop in any intelligent species. Yet human authors consistently imagine a universe where they alone have discovered the cognitive benefit of laughter." This extended even to robots and artificial intelligences, who in human fiction were invariably confused by humor until a pivotal moment when they suddenly got a joke, a moment always framed as the AI becoming more human. The implication, Dr. Mork concluded, is that humor is not merely a trait humans possess, but a superpower they wield, one that redefines them as exceptional in a universe that would otherwise render them insignificant. The audience contemplated this analysis silently until one brave attendee raised a tentacle. But they asked hesitantly, "Are any of these human jokes actually funny?" Dr. Mork's expression remained carefully neutral. "That," he replied, "remains the greatest mystery of all." Professor Alan White stepped back from his masterpiece, a comprehensive analysis of humanity's portrayal in science fiction. The holographic display before him showed thousands of data points spanning centuries of literature, film, and interactive media. "What we're seeing," he explained to his graduate students, "isn't just bad science or wishful thinking. It's a framework for processing our existential anxiety." The implications went far deeper than simple entertainment. These ridiculous portrayals of humans in science fiction revealed profound truths about humanity's psychological needs in the face of an expanding universe. "Consider the all-powerful human trope," Allen continued. "It emerged most prominently during periods of significant technological change, when people felt control slipping away. The more helpless humans felt in reality, the more godlike they became in fiction." His students nodded, taking notes. The correlation was undeniable. During the Industrial Revolution, the nuclear age, the AI boom, each technological leap that diminished individual human importance corresponded with a surge in stories about humans with inexplicable powers. The absurdly intelligent human followed a similar pattern, Allen noted, but specifically during periods of educational crisis. When standardized test scores dropped, when foreign educational systems outperformed domestic ones, suddenly fiction filled with humans who could outthink superintelligent aliens without trying. What made these patterns significant wasn't their predictability, but their psychological function. These weren't just stories. They were coping mechanisms, allowing humans to process fears about their place in an increasingly complex universe. The unlikely hero may be the most telling, Allen suggested. It flourished whenever social mobility declined. When real paths to achievement narrowed, fiction widened them dramatically, suggesting that anyone, regardless of qualification, might save the galaxy through luck and pluck. This analysis extended beyond individual tropes. The elevation of humor as a uniquely human trait coincided with periods when humanity felt most threatened by climate change, by pandemic, by technological displacement. When everything else was stripped away, humor remained the human advantage. These portrayals aren't about aliens at all, Allen concluded. They're about us, our hopes, our fears, our desperate need to believe we matter in a universe that increasingly suggests otherwise. His most controversial finding concerned crossover points, moments when obviously ridiculous sci-fi tropes began appearing in supposedly serious scientific speculation and even policy discussions. The line between fiction and aspiration has always been dangerously thin, Allen warned. When we tell ourselves often enough that we're cosmically special, we start believing it, sometimes with catastrophic consequences. He highlighted historical examples, military strategies influenced by fictional portrayals of human exceptionalism, diplomatic blunders stemming from the belief that human unpredictability would confound more methodical species, scientific research derailed by the assumption that humans would inevitably out-innovate artificial intelligence through creativity or intuition. These stories comfort us, Alan acknowledged, but they also blind us. They encourage a dangerous complacency, a belief that being human is enough, that we don't need to work at improvement because our species is inherently special. The most sobering data point appeared at the center of his display, a steadily rising graph showing the correlation between humanity's real challenges and the increasing absurdity of their fictional self-portrayals. The more precarious our actual position becomes, Alan observed quietly, the more outlandish our fictional dominance grows. It's as if we're collectively whistling past the graveyard of our own potential extinction. His students shifted uncomfortably. So what's the alternative? One finally asked. Should we just write stories about humans being cosmically insignificant? Alan smiled sadly. The alternative isn't nihilism, it's honesty. Fiction that acknowledges our limitations while celebrating our genuine strengths. Stories that inspire us to earn our place in the universe rather than assuming we're entitled to it. The holographic display shifted, showing a new generation of science fiction. Stories where humans were neither gods nor jokes, but complex beings working to deserve their survival. These, Alan said, may ultimately save us where the power fantasies cannot. Dr. Jim Roberts stood before the Museum of Science Fiction's newest exhibit, Humans, Aliens, and the Politics of Representation. Behind him, interactive displays showcased the evolution of human portrayal in science fiction across different cultures and time periods. What's fascinating, he told the gathered journalists, isn't just that humans are portrayed ridiculously in science fiction, but how the specific flavor of that ridiculousness varies dramatically across cultural contexts. The exhibit demonstrated this through parallel timelines. While American science fiction often featured humans who single-handedly outfought alien armadas, Soviet-era science fiction portrayed collective human intelligence overcoming cosmic challenges. Japanese science fiction frequently examined the relationship between humans and technology, while Nigerian science fiction explored humans as cultural bridges between disparate species. The ridiculous human isn't a universal archetype, Jim explained, but rather a mirror reflecting each culture's values, fears, and aspirations. This cultural context explained why the tropes varied so significantly. In individualistic societies, the unlikely hero dominated. In collectivist cultures, entire human communities exhibited exceptional traits. In militaristic periods, humans displayed unbelievable combat prowess. During scientific revolutions, they showed impossible intellectual abilities. Science fiction has never really been about predicting the future, Jim noted. It's about processing the present. The exhibit's central case study examined how first contact scenarios evolved throughout the 20th and early 21st centuries. In the 1950s, amid Cold War paranoia, aliens were typically invaders, and humans triumphed through plucky determination. By the 1970s, as environmental awareness grew, aliens often served as ecological judges, with humans proving their worth through newfound wisdom. The digital age brought stories of humans outthinking artificial intelligences through emotional intelligence or creativity, precisely the qualities people feared technology might render obsolete. Each era's anxieties, Jim observed, create corresponding compensatory fantasies. The most revealing section compared contemporaneous works from different nations facing similar challenges. When both Japan and America experienced technological disruption in the 1980s, Japanese science fiction often explored integration with technology, while American stories more frequently featured humans triumphing over technology through distinctly human qualities. These aren't just stories, Jim emphasized. They're cultural processing mechanisms, ways of negotiating change through narrative. The exhibit didn't merely catalog these patterns, it questioned them. Interactive displays allowed visitors to reimagine classic science fiction scenarios from different cultural perspectives. What would War of the Worlds look like if written from a communal rather than individualistic viewpoint? How might the day the Earth stood still differ if conceived in a society that valued harmony over confrontation? By recognizing these patterns, Jim concluded, we gain perspective not just on science fiction, but on ourselves. We see which qualities we truly value, which threats we genuinely fear, and which futures we actually desire. The exhibit's final section posed a provocative question. What happens when these cultural narratives collide with reality? As humanity moved closer to actual space exploration and potential contact with extraterrestrial life or intelligence, how would these deeply ingrained cultural expectations shape our responses? The danger, Jim warned, isn't just that our fiction is unrealistic. It's that our expectations have been shaped by cultural narratives we don't even recognize as optional. Recent research suggested these fictional portrayals influenced everything from space program funding to SETI protocols to AI development frameworks. People raised on stories of human exceptionalism designed systems that presumed humanity would always maintain superiority, potentially catastrophic hubris in the face of genuine cosmic challenges. Science fiction isn't just entertainment, Jim concluded. It's the mythology of our technological age, shaping our expectations, our decisions, and ultimately our future. The ridiculous human in these stories might seem harmless, even inspiring, but the moment we mistake these cultural fantasies for inherent truths is the moment we risk our actual survival. On a research station orbiting Earth, two beings observed the planet below. They weren't human, though their forms were temporarily adjusted to approximate human appearance for convenience. Their true nature would have been incomprehensible to terrestrial minds. Their fiction continues to fascinate me, said the first observer, who went by the name Frank for simplicity's sake, particularly how they portray themselves in speculative scenarios. His companion, who had adopted the name Greg, manipulated the console between them, bringing up thousands of human science fiction narratives spanning centuries. The pattern is consistent, Greg noted. When imagining encounters with non-human intelligence, they invariably attribute to themselves qualities that are either statistically improbable or physically impossible. Frank nodded, the most common being some form of exceptionalism, that despite being objectively average in cosmic terms, they possess some innate specialness that would make them significant on a universal scale. They had been studying human culture for what humans would consider several hundred years, though time flowed differently for their kind. What had begun as routine observation had evolved into something approaching genuine interest. What I find most telling, Greg continued, is how their fictional portrayals become more exaggerated as their actual knowledge expands. The more they learn about the universe's vastness, the more desperately their fiction asserts their importance within it. Frank considered this a psychological defense mechanism, perhaps, the cognitive dissonance between their evolved sense of self-importance and the mathematical certainty of their cosmic insignificance creates narrative compensation. The station's systems continued recording and analyzing human broadcasts, literature, and digital communications. Every story humans told about themselves and their place in the universe was cataloged, cross-referenced, and examined for insight into their psychology. There's something almost endearing about it, Frank admitted after a moment. This persistent belief that being human automatically confers some special status or ability. That humor, or love, or some other quality they've evolved would somehow be unique among the billions of intelligent species. Greg's expression shifted to what approximated amusement. Remember the narratives where humans defeat advanced artificial intelligence through creativity or thinking outside the box, as if selection pressures on any world wouldn't favor cognitive flexibility, or where humans alone understand emotional connection, despite emotions being a fundamental information processing mechanism evolved by social organisms throughout the galaxy, Frank added. They watched as the station's systems highlighted new science fiction being created on Earth at that very moment. Thousands of stories featuring humans as cosmic special cases, gifted with unique insights or abilities that would somehow make them exceptional in a universe teeming with diversity. The irony, Greg observed quietly, is that their actual uniqueness lies precisely in this delusion of specialness. Most species accept their place in the cosmic hierarchy once they understand it. Humans appear pathologically incapable of doing so. Frank considered this. Perhaps that's not entirely negative. This delusion has driven them to survive against considerable odds. Their refusal to accept limitations, however irrational, has produced genuine achievements. True, Greg acknowledged, though it may ultimately prove fatal when they encounter actual challenges beyond their capability. Challenges they believe they'll overcome through human spirit, or some equally nebulous concept. The observation station completed another orbit around Earth. Below, billions of humans went about their lives, telling stories in which they were the most important beings in the universe, stories that simultaneously revealed profound insecurity and remarkable aspiration. The final question, Frank said, is whether we should disabuse them of these notions when the time comes for formal contact. Would understanding their true cosmic position be devastating or liberating? Greg considered the planet thoughtfully. Perhaps their fiction serves a purpose we've overlooked. Perhaps these ridiculous portrayals aren't mere self-aggrandizement, but aspirational modeling. Stories they tell to become better than they are. You're suggesting their fictional absurdities might actually help them evolve? Frank asked.